So yeah, I mean basically what I put together here is a little bit different to what I would normally take to a synth meet or something like that, because I knew, like, well, initially the plan was that Ben would have like kind of loads of modulation sources like the Octo controller from Abstract Data in there, which can spit out like loads of different kind of random voltages and cycling random voltages and stuff. And I'd normally use quite a lot of those sort of things in my patching and kind of random gates and stuff like that. So, you know, potentially later on we could maybe try cross-patching some of that with this. But what it meant was that I actually ended up with a lot more space in my case for putting sort of audio sort of sources and stuff like that, more than I'd normally have. So when you're kind of planning out a system, obviously it is quite mentally taxing trying to work out how you can get an interesting working system in, like, well, this is 104 HP. So this time I had the luxury of being able to kind of have quite a few sort of oscillators and stuff. So basically, I've gone for a nice sort of analogue section over on the left-hand side. I'm not sure I'm going to be using the Dixie in retrospect, but it's there anyway. I put that in there largely so I can FM the Rubicon with it if I wanted, or sync the Rubicon. But the Rubicon is going to be the main kind of backbone of the patch. And it's great, you know, it literally just gives you anything that you want in the sort of analog realm, from subs to sines to all the different waveforms, FM, oscillator sync, you know, it's got it all there. So it's not small, but it does give you a lot in that kind of space. And then basically, this has been a bit of a favourite for portable systems recently, is the Minimod, AJH Synth Minimod Transistor Ladder Filter, which is basically combines a 3-input mixer with a really gorgeous low-pass filter. So basically you're getting two for, you know, two things in the space. As well. And it's nice and sort of easy to play and stuff. So that's been in there quite a bit. Then you've also got you've got a nice VCA and then a simple ADSR. That VCA is awesome. It's got a nice range of tones you can get out of that. And CV responses, it's really ergonomic to play. Because I do quite a lot of sort of bringing stuff in and out while I'm jamming with stuff, and I find it really frustrating if I can't get my fingers in to actually play with it. And I think subconsciously I've picked a load of stuff where the jacks are all at the bottom. I did have some other modules in here yesterday, and like basically I've got it written down here, like multifunctional versus ergonomics. Now when you're planning a portable case, it's very easy to get sucked into picking stuff that does loads of stuff, like that does loads of fancy tricks and can be used as a mixer or as a VCA or as an attenuator or as this, that and the other. And it's great in theory until sometimes when you actually start playing with it and you realise that it's really confusing and you can't get your fingers into it, and it's like, you know, it might be brilliant if you're just at home and you're kind of calm and you've got time to assess what's happening. But I actually realised, you know what, I'm just going to keep it a bit more simple, and I'm going to have just a simple ADSR and a simple VCA that just does one thing, does it well, and I can get in and turn knobs if I want to. And I actually whipped out, I did have the Ultrafold in, the WMD Ultrafold, because I'm a big fan of that. I whipped that out and put a mixer in, because although the Minimod's got a mixer in it, and the Optimix can be used as a mixer. I think sometimes you just, for your mental state, need something that just says mixer on it. And then you can bring everything together and just run it out of that.
That one isn't strictly a mixer though?
It's not, no, I mean I use it a lot as a mixer, but it's an attenuator. It can be used as 3 individual channels. So you can attenuate them, you can put them in bipolar mode, and then you can invert them. It's like an attenuverter. If nothing's plugged in, it outputs a DC offset. So like, you have to watch that a little bit sometimes. So as you can see, when I turn that up, all those green lights come on, because it's actually sending out a sort of plus whatever voltage DC offset. So you have to sort of be a little bit careful when you're using it that you're not mixing things you weren't intending to. So if I take an output from there, it's taking the combined signals from those 3 inputs. But if I plugged it into the second one, it would only take the signals to the first two, and that would be an independent one at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's pretty good though. If you were putting like a small portable system,
Oh yes,
that's
I always
doing a lot of
like
jobs that
yeah.
you would use maths for.
Yeah,
That's why I
have
think
done
a
that.
small portable system is always in danger of being entirely in green, red and white. And just
Yeah, that's
beautiful
quite
instruments
yeah.
because they're
they
they
thought
make
about
sense.
that. Yeah, totally.
So basically, analog stuff, then we've got the pingable envelope generator, which always seems to make, I don't think I've done a portable system that hasn't made it into, and it's not without its quirks, but it is just an instant source of kind of funky rhythmic madness.
Modulation.
Yeah, it's just great, and again it can be used as envelopes, it can be used as LFOs, you can almost use it as an oscillator. It will go up to sort of audio rates. And then we've got braids offering the kind of digital madness, which, it's just an instant treasure trove of crazy sounds. And once you get a bit of modulation set up into it, you can just literally flick through the patches and it can just suddenly jump into something completely different and unexpected. Then the Optimix low pass gate, which combines obviously filtering and volume control and sort of enveloping and shaping all in one module with a couple of knobs. So giving me another way of taking the output from somewhere and kind of sort of shaping it dynamically. So basically, so I also wanted something that could be run as separate voices if I wanted, so I could basically run the Rubicon into that, and that'd be one voice. I could have, say, the Dixie going into the top bit of the Optimix, and then the Braze going into the bottom one, all triggered at different times as separate voices, or I could combine them. I could combine them all together in shades, put them through the VCA, and have one monster synth. There's just loads of different ways you could patch it, and to me that's key when you're taking something out and you're going to be limited to that kind of selection of modules. You don't want to be stuck thinking, oh, I wish I had like another VCA or something, which it always tends to be VCAs that I'm missing, but I think we've got it covered mainly there. I would like another VCA.
Well, perhaps you can never have enough.
Well, no. I mean, I've been a bit greedy putting Braze in. Really, I could possibly do without that and just fill it with some more utility things or some random stuff. But anyway, I'll get something patched up. I'm basically just going to be going for a very sort of simple, basic sort of standard synth voice sound, and then I'm going to be layering some braids up over the top of it and just sort of experimenting with that. So initially I need to patch up some outputs from the Rubicon into the mini mod. This is kind of, every time I go to the Rubicon I tend to patch this kind of thing up. I'm getting a bit stuck in a rut with it, but it's quite a nice rut.
So what are you taking out there? Just two?
So I'm just taking the sub output, I'm taking the pulse output so that I can do pulse width modulation if I want, and I'm taking the double saw output. Now the reason I've picked them is the sub can go down an octave or down 2 octaves, so that already gives you a nice spread from your bass pitch. The pulse can be at the sort of bass pitch of the oscillator, or it can be up an octave, so that already gives you a nice spread between that and the sub oscillator. And the double saw is up an octave by default, so you can have that, then you can have the pulse width down an octave, then you can have the sub down either an octave or 2 octaves from that, so you've got like a big spread, big fat sound, and you can adjust that while you're jamming. The sine wave also does kind of up an octave stuff, but it's kind of a weird sound that kind of sounds more like a saw when you flip it up an octave. So it's kind of cool though, because it means you can suddenly bring in a different kind of tone. So that's all going into the transistor ladder filter, which has got this 3-channel mixer on it. Then what was I playing then? So basically, I was just going to whack a CV output from my trusty Korg sequencer, which has been quite useful actually. You have to send it via a buffered mult, otherwise you do get quite obvious pitch drooping when you start playing with it. So that I'm just going to mult into various places. I'll probably just...
Is that quantized as well?
It is, yeah, so it's quite handy because I haven't got any other sort of quantized sequencers to hand. So I'll whack that into the Rubicon.
Braids is as well, isn't it? Braids quantized.
Braids can be, it doesn't have to be. And then, sorry, little cable. So basically, let's just take that out of there, and we'll run that into my VCA. And then we'll take that out into the mixer. So I'm using shades really as a sort of output mixer. So we've got a little kind of riff going on. As you can hear, it's got a lovely feel on it.
I didn't realise that I had a mixer on it as well.
So basically we've got a little sort of random pattern going on from the chord sequencer. We've got like really sub, then we've got like a kind of a very thin sort of pulse wave going on in the middle, but I will be adding some modulation to that to sort of make it do some more interesting stuff. Then you've got the double saw up the octave. So you can get a fairly kind of like big sort of stacked sound. Yeah. So basically I'm going to now get some VCA action going on. So I need to basically trigger an envelope now.
Is that tracking on the Rubicon? Because they sound, I mean they all sound really good together, but they sound a little bit not quite in pitch.
They should be, because it's all one frequency.
Yeah.
It might be that because they're square waves, sometimes square waves, you get this kind of weird pseudo like out of tune sort of sound when they're down quite low.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you take square waves really low, they sort of sound a bit almost like out of tune. Just some kind of weird, somebody could probably explain it in more technical terms.
In electronic sense.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
have
sure
no
what it is.
idea.
Really. It's just one of those things. I actually quite like saw wave subs, but you don't really get them on many synths. So basically, we've now got a little envelope.
So where's that envelope coming from again?
So basically, we've got a mode on the Korg where it's got it's not only randomly flicking through the steps, but it's using the bottom row to control how long each step is. So basically, it's got a random, it's got duty cycle they call it. So it's how long each gate is. So if you're using an ADSR, you get the result of having this. Some notes really short, some notes a bit longer.
So it does like CV a takt indicator, I guess, of an album.
It's more length.
Okay.
So the frequency central envelope's a nice kind of snappy kind of sound. So that's doing your basic patch. What else did I have lined up on that? So now basically what it needs is a little bit of modulation going on really. So let me just grab that. Multifunctional, you see. Hello? Yes, come in. So basically, what I've actually got going on now is the pingable envelope generator. Now, it's a bit hard to explain what this does, but I shall do my best. It specs a clock of some description into the ping input, and that will determine how long the envelopes are that are output from it. So as the ping speeds up, come in. Sorry. As the input into the ping speeds up, the envelopes get shorter. So it almost, and if they're cycling, it's almost like an oscillator where it all kind of, the length of the waveform cycle sort of increases and decreases depending on the frequency of the clock that's coming into it. So it's pretty cool. You can use it just, you can trigger it or you can set it to cycle, and then it just does kind of looping, cycling, sort of mad modulation. Now, you could keep the clock going into the ping input steady, and then you could modulate the division. And the division will obviously then divide that clock down, and the envelope will get longer when you put a voltage into the division CV input, or shorter. You can also modulate the skew, which is the sort of shape of the envelope, the sort of attack and the decay of it, and also the curve from linear to exponential to logarithmic. So you can get some quite varied sort of tones out of it. Another way of doing it, which is what I'm going to do here, is sending an erratic clock source into the ping input itself. So it's constantly having to recalculate like kind of what the length of the envelope should be and stuff. It gets a bit unpredictable, and it does send out some weird little sort of spikes here and there, which can be a bit annoying when you're using it with the VCA, but it does have some quite cool effects. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take the output from the gate, from the core, because basically the gates that are coming out of that keep changing in length. So basically I'm going to send them into the pingable envelope generator as a clock, but a clock that keeps changing. And it has some quite cool sort of effects on it. So when I stick it into that, you can see it's trying to calculate what sort of speed to run at, and it doesn't have a clue. It's just kind of getting completely confused. So what I'm then going to do is send the output of that into the filter to modulate the cutoff on it. Modulation into the mix. So basically use that same output from the pingable envelope generator. It's got a bipolar output with its own attenuator, and it's also got a unipolar 5-volt output. So it's quite easy to just immediately just sort of stick another output from it into something. So let's just it's not rocket science. It's just a few basic things that you would do with any kind of sort of standard synth voice patch with a bit of craziness from the pinball envelope generator. So I thought, like, well, what can I do to make it a little bit more interesting? It sounds nice. I'm a sucker for kind of standard, sort of big, fat-sounding kind of analog stuff. But sometimes you want to throw a bit of madness over the top of it. Which is where Braze comes into the picture. So I'm going to take the 1 volt per octave signal from the Korg, stick that into Braze. Then we're going to stick Braze into the Optimix. And then I'm going to take the output of the Optimix into our mixer. So we're basically going to have a low pass gate filtered kind of version of Braze. Now it's a pretty plain kind of sound that I've got coming out of it initially. Just turn that down a little bit. So it's just a kind of like drony kind of like voice, it's a VOSN, like voice simulator thing. But it sounds quite cool over the top of like a big fat kind of bass sound, so I thought I'd use it. And then I'm going to basically ping the low pass gate, so all you need to do is send a gate into it so that it triggers the strike input, and then it'll basically make it into a kind of little plucky sort of thing. So we've got that going on, which we can layer up with. It's got a EOF output, which is end of full. So basically, at the end of the decay, if you like, it outputs a little pulse. A lot of function generators do this. Matt's probably going to be doing stuff with that as well. Maths and various things. When they complete their cycle, they send a little ping out of it. So you can use it to sort of trigger another envelope or something. So I'm going to use that to ping the other side of the pingable envelope generator, which is a trick I like doing because it basically means that the two sides are kind of linked together in a sort of way. Now I could have them at the same speed, and then they're, like Matt's saying, they would just ping off each other at the same speed. But what's quite nice is actually having them running, like one running at half the speed of the other. So basically, if you get a little fast flurry on the left-hand side, you get it on the right, but at half speed and slightly afterwards. So they're sort of like linked, but like not sort of quite so obviously. So I'm now going to take the output of that and I'm going to run it into the control input of the Optimix. And what that will do is fade up the kind of volume and the frequency of the filter on the Optimix. So in addition to getting the little ping at the start of each note, you'll actually get some kind of weird sort of modulation on top of it as well. So. I'm going to take the other output from the peg and I'll run that into the timbre CV input, so it will add a little bit of kind of movement to the actual timbral element to the braids, which can be different depending on what patch you're on. They all do different things. So it's quite good fun once you get a bit of modulation going into it to just then start flicking through the patches. So basically now it should do some kind of... Then I also discovered earlier that if you flick it onto this, it gets really quite insane. So let's just try that. Yeah, so brave. Over to you, Matt.
One thing to add while you're swapping, well, those AGH synth modules are some of the best synth sound I've ever heard out of anything.
Yeah.
That,
I mean, it's
filter
just
sounds amazing.
delivers, doesn't it?
But the
It's
mixer
like,
in that
after
saturates just like those CP3 mixers.
Yeah,
with the
more
STG
subtle. I'd
mix.
say it's got
yeah,
a
it's
bit of
not
a
quite as
quieter
hard,
edge.
but they're a godsend.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
it's
the
like,
CP3 ones are that.
to be honest, the combination of like you've got the slight saturation on that, where you've got more you drive it, yeah, that's without it. But then you've also got the amplitude, so that's with no saturation on the VCA. So it's got a really more than nice. A lot of that's quite on
Something sounds a bit of control in there as well. Is that
what?
the
Natural.
low pass gate.
It's
the Optimix.
it's literally it's because it's got a combination of a bit of offset on the VCA. So instead of it being shut completely like
It rings.
that, I'm letting some of it ring through.
The saturation on that mixer in the filter does sound like the top channels of my Optimix. Because
Yeah.
they're all varied, the top channel in my Optimix is more saturated.
Yeah, mine saturates with it.
Similar colour to
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, mine's different.
but almost tight and clean at the
Yeah.
top one just smacks really hard.
Is that by design or is that just
Variation.
variation?